Hi guys, good evening, and welcome back once again to the EdWord. I'm your host Eddie, and in tonight's video I will be doing my episode recap and review for episode 5 of season 2 of The Strain. Now, before I begin, as usual, of course, I must warn you that this review will be full of massive spoilers regarding the newest episode of The Strain. So if you're not caught up on The Strain, or if you're behind a few episodes, do not watch or continue listening to this video. You have been warned. That being said, I really enjoyed the opening of this episode because we've got it's like a clean and sweep team going through like apartment, door to door, looking for Strigoi and looking for any human survivors. And it was very reminiscent of the original Dawn of the Dead. George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead from 1978, where it had like the SWAT team going in, busting down doors, getting people out, evacuating people, and then shooting whatever zombies were walking around. And that's what this reminded me of. I'm like, very Dawn of the Dead-ish. And so it's like a clean and sweep team, and it's the councilwoman's goon squad, as Dutch refers to them. They're going from door to door, and they're killing Strigoi, and they're evacuating people out of the apartment building because it's not safe. And then they encounter one of the creepy little blind children. And they're known as the Feelers. They encounter a couple of the Feelers, and the Feelers have tongues similar to the Strigoi, and latch out, and they hit one of the SWAT troopers. He's struck, but it's not a fatal bite. At least it doesn't look fatal. But he most likely is now infected with all the white worms inside him. But he survives. His buddies come to his rescue, but two men are killed while the little children make their escape. Meanwhile, Dutch gets word that Fett has been arrested, so she has to go bail him out. Nora decides to go with her, but F, of course, is trying to get her to come with him to Washington to present to the government that they've got a solution to the strain. They've got a solution to the problem in New York. And, Nora actually insists that she'll be staying behind to not only watch over Zach, but also because F needs to do this alone. He needs to make this trek to DC alone, because if all three of them were to go, like him, Nora, and Zach, if all three of them were to go, they'd be much harder for them to move around, and if anything goes wrong, they would need to move fast, and F would be a lot better off on his own. So F reluctantly agrees. He decides to go to Washington alone. He leaves Zach in Nora's care. Meanwhile, Satrakian is meeting with the criminal boss, the crime boss, who originally purchased the stolen car from Felix and Gus back in Season 1. He's also the arms dealer who had those cargo shipping containers full of Strigoi for some reason. But now Abraham somehow located him and wants to get the book from him. The book that he and Palmer were looking for in the last episode in the flashback. If that confused you, let me make it very clear. In the previous episode, during the flashback, a young Abraham and a young Palmer were looking for the book which is supposedly to have a silver cover, and it's the book that has the key to the secret to effectively killing a Strigoi. Now, everybody knows, you can shoot them, you can stab them, you can cut off their heads, you can rip out their tongues, but this book has the secret, the key to actually killing all Strigoi, like once and for all, like specifically how to kill the master. And Abraham, for some reason, thinks that this guy has it. And after a little standoff, which is great because Abraham having absolutely no fear, this old man holding his cane up to the guy's neck with his two goons pointing their guns at him, Abraham totally not giving a shit and just completely fearless insists that the guy helps him. And so the guy was like, of course, put down your guns, guys. Put down your guns. Come on now. But that was funny to see. It's just Abraham, this old man, holding his sword cane up to this guy's throat. That was great. I really liked that. And so then Dutch and Nora go down to the local police station, where we see all of the refugees from the opening of the episode, where they've been relocated to, where they all need to undergo a medical examination to see if anybody's been infected or not. Well, Nora and Dutch reveal they have a quicker, much faster method of detecting. Whew, excuse me. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Anyway, Nora and Dutch go up to the councilwoman who happens to be there, and they tell her, Justine, they tell her they have a much quicker, faster, better method of indicating as to whether or not somebody's infected or not. But first, they want Fett released. Fett's released. Dutch is pissed that he's got a nice little bruise on his face. But, Fett doesn't seem to care that much. And, while they're trying to talk smack to the squad leader, the guy who is in charge of the raid on the apartments earlier in the episode, they make reference to him how they really ought to be using ultralights and silver. And the guy seems completely unaware and oblivious to it. And the guy even admits that Fett did a good job blowing up the tunnels and sealing off the subway to the Strigoi, but he also points out they can't just have civilians blowing up whatever they feel like. So I can kind of see where he's coming from, but he also didn't have to be a dick about it when he and his men arrested Fett. That being said, Fett and Dutch actually agree to go along with this guy to continue cleaning out the apartment building that he and his men started clearing out in the beginning of the episode. Because he tells them, I'm down 2 men and I could use 2 people who can handle themselves. And they're like, sure, yeah, it's fun for us, so we'll go. I was like, all right, Fett and Dutch are getting in on the clean and sweep team. So, moving along from there, it cuts back to F, and F has now shaved his head because he's still a fugitive from the FBI from season 1, even though, they've got way bigger problems on their hands. He doesn't want to be recognized by anybody for fear he'd be taken into custody and his trip would be worth for nothing. So he shaves his head bald, and I believe in real life, Corey Strahl is actually bald in real life, and the show and on the strain so far, his hair has actually been a wig, but I think it's pretty good makeup. I wasn't able to tell that was a wig until somebody told me recently, oh yeah, he's bald in real life. And when we see him bald for the first time, I immediately thought, oh, the Yellow Jacket, because I have just seen Ant-Man recently for the first time, and I really liked it, and I'll talk about that in another video, but he is in that movie as the main villain, and I'm like, oh, Darren Cross or the Yellow Jacket. So, but no, he looks good bald. Some people look good bald, some don't. But so he's shaves his head bald, so he disguises himself, and then he tries to say goodbye to his son. And he and Zach are still struggling, just so struggling to maintain a father-son relationship. And Zach clearly still resents him for, allowing his mother to become a Strigoi, and even though it technically wasn't F's fault, he still blames F for it, since F is the closest person he can blame right now for his mother's present condition. And Zach is being a stubborn little jackass who's refusing to acknowledge that his mother is beyond saving, despite F's efforts to tell him, yeah, she's gone. She's too far gone. She's not coming back. She will never be human again. He tries to explain to him the importance of his mission of getting to D.C. so he can present to the world, to the government, about the solution that he and Nora came up with in the previous episode where they successfully infected the Strigoi and it was killing the Strigoi one by one. Now, true, the Master had them killing themselves to prevent the spread of this new strain, but the point is it works. So F gets to the subway station, he gets on the train, which takes him directly to Washington, D.C. He's taking great care, to make sure that nobody recognizes him. He has a phony ID that he received from one of Dutch's associates, and he's got a fake name, fake CDC badge, and he calls himself Dr. Jonathan Crawley. And so far so good, until, unfortunately, he encounters his old boss, Barnes from the CDC. Barnes, who is now an agent, a puppet of both Palmer and Eichhorst, in helping them cover up the true nature of this crisis and keeping them informed, of course, as to the government's efforts regarding this outbreak. But point being, he's a bad guy now. And he was always a kind of an asshole to begin with, but now he's definitely a bad guy. And despite F's best efforts to avoid him, he encounters Barnes on the train, and at first, after a little initial standoff, Barnes insists that F can trust him, and he won't stop him from carrying out his mission, because F says, I have found a way to stop this strain from, continue spreading. And Barnes at first is like, yeah, go for it. You can trust me. I'm not going to stop you. But F doesn't take any chances, and he immediately knocks him out on his ass, and he's like, I do know you, Barnes, and I can't trust you. I'm sorry, but I can't let you stop me. And he continues to avoid Barnes, but then they get into a little fist fight together in between two train cars, of course, and it reminded me of that fight scene between Bruce Willis and Peter Stormare from Mercury Rising, where those two duke it out on a train and really beat the hell out of each other. That's what this scene in The Strain here kind of reminded me of. And, he and Barnes are going at it, and Barnes is like, give it up, F. You can't stop them. They're too powerful. You might as well choose the winning side. And that shows you what a complete sellout and coward Barnes is. So he's completely sold out. He practically has sold his soul, much like Palmer has. And so, after they scuffle for a bit, and F originally is in between the two train cars contemplating, should I jump now that I'm practically trapped on this train? Because once Barnes regains consciousness and gets the guards on the train, it's over. But fortunately, before he can jump, that's when Barnes discovers him, they scuffle, and F successfully knocks him out of the train. We do not see him die, although the train was going awfully fast, so he very well could have been killed on impact after being thrown out of the train, but we don't see him actually die. So then F is safe for the rest of his journey. He gets to Washington, D.C., he gets through security, and he is safe. Also, very creative and ingenious, very ingenious of him to hide the little vial holding the new strain that supposedly can stop the Strigoi strain in an urn filled with fake ashes. He tells the security guards, my wife's ashes, I'm spreading them here at her family's house in D.C. per her last request. And fortunately, he's buried it in the urn so the guy doesn't see it. And then he gets to D.C., he is safe. So going back to New York now, we see Dutch and Fett and the squad leader and his men continuing clearing out the apartment building from the opening of the episode. And while they're doing this, Nora is actually showing Justine and her staff of how to check for people and diagnose them to whether or not they're infected with the ultralight. Sure enough, she shows Justine on one unfortunate gentleman who's got all the worms showing through his veins thanks to the ultralight. And of course, they take him off to the side to break the bad news to him. And then Nora advises Justine that it should be the guy's decision as to whether or not he should die now or after he turns. Also include the family's voice, of course. And then Justine pulls Nora aside, revealing that her nephew was injured on the raid earlier this morning, and she's not sure if he was infected or not, but she wants Nora to check. And sure enough, the poor young man's neck lights up like a Christmas tree as he is filled with worms. And you can just see the reaction on Justine's face. She is just completely devastated and heartbroken. And Nora realizes, who this is, and she's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, sorry, that's all you've got is I'm sorry? There must be something we can do. And then she even points out loud to Nora saying, I've told my people to be okay with this, but even I can't be okay with it. So, she's actually proving that she is a good leader, admitting her own faults when she can't even enforce her own rules. And I think that's an admirable trait. So I'm hoping we get to see Justine have a bigger role as the season progresses. And I'm sure we will, because now she's really got motivation to stop the spread of the Strigoi, because now her own family's been affected by it. Her poor nephew is now infected. And so she reluctantly allows Nora to inject her nephew with a heavy dosage of morphine while he's still human in his coma, and it effectively kills him, so he dies peacefully. Which, if you ask me, is a lot better than turning into a Strigoi and then dying. But now Justine and her people, her task force, know how to really handle the Strigoi, thanks to Nora, Dutch, and Fett. Dutch and Fett are showing the squad leader of how to effectively kill Strigoi. Like, they make good examples of the silver grenades they have, and of course the modified nail gun with the silver nails. And it impresses the squad leader, and there's a great scene where they open up the elevator shaft, and sure enough, nesting down below, a group of Strigoi. Dutch is like, fire in the hole! it blows up and they all evaporate into dust, and the squad leader looks down. He's like, okay, I could see how the silver would be effective. And now they can pass along the knowledge to everybody else in the city. This is how you can effectively kill the Strigoi. True, it's just as easy as shooting them in the head or the torso or whatever, but now we know other ways to kill them for people who don't have guns. Silver and ultralight. So now they can pass along that message to everybody in New York and not just the CDC squads. So that was good. And let's see. And then Abraham actually does convince the crime boss to contact him once he does find a copy of the book, putting a fancy Rolex watch as down payment, promising another Rolex watch once the guy finds the book for him. And as Abraham's walking home, he's being trolled by somebody, and it's like, who could this be? Could this be one of the goons? Could this be a Strigoi? Could this be somebody else? Who is it? Mr. Fitzwilliam, he's back. And he's like, I'm ready to help. And a little smirk goes on Abraham's face. He's like, all right, he's ready to help us. Now we can get some juicy info from him about Palmer. And speaking of Palmer, while he and his lovely assistant are out to dinner at some very well-protected, fancy restaurant establishment, a local cardinal comes up trying to tell Palmer in code, but not being that subtle about it, that the item he was asking about may have been recovered. So Palmer is also looking for this book, as well as this proves that Palmer does not have possession of this book as Abraham originally predicted or theorized that he did. So Palmer's looking for it as well, and obviously in Palmer's case he'll use it to give to Eichhorst and the Master so that they can destroy it and nobody can use it against any of the Strigoi. So this was a good episode. I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. I liked seeing Dutch and Fett joining the clean and sweep team, I guess we can call them, when going through the apartments, going door to door and killing the Strigoi. And they encounter the feelers as well. They encountered one of the feelers, because when the squad leader starts telling them about the spider kids, as he refers to them, you know, both of them look perplexed, like, what are you talking about? He's like, you haven't seen these before? So now they've got a new threat to deal with. Or not necessarily a new threat, just a new kind of Strigoi, basically. Because they, you know, the children have the same qualities as a regular Strigoi, the shooting out tongue, and if they cut you or hit you, you get full of worms. So, you know, now they've got that to deal with. And also, towards the end of the episode, we see a private jet has landed in an airfield in New Jersey, and the airport manager and one of his men go up to the two pilots and say, hey, you guys were told not to land here. This is a restricted area. This whole area within 60 miles of New York is under quarantine. What are you doing? It's like, well, our client, he's already gone. He left. And they have European accents. Sorry, that was not the accent I was going for, but they have they have foreign accents, point being. And the two guys, you know, go over and they look at the fence, which has just been ripped from the pole, and the fence has been pulled apart as if something strong ripped through them. And we see a car pull up to the edge of the woods, and it looks like a sun hunter, a civilized Strigoi, like what Vaughn and his men were, the ones who recruited Gus, because he's got the similar cloak and the robe, and it looks like he has a huge bone hanging behind his back, like a spear or a staff or a walking stick or something. And then there's this woman waiting for him in the car saying, we're ready. And he nods and they drive off. End of episode. What's that about? Could this be Vaughn's replacement? Could this be the new leader of the Sun Hunters? Has he been summoned by the ancients somehow to come to New York and finish Vaughn's work? Is he supposed to reach out and reconnect with Gus? Who knows? Very good episode. Really enjoyed it. 2 thumbs up. It was a good job, cast and crew of The Strain. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and watching tonight's video on my episode review and recap. And don't forget to catch The Strain every Sunday night on FX. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click subscribe and comment and like this video. Leave your thoughts and opinions down below. Let's be respectful of one another's beliefs and opinions, of course. And thanks again for tuning in and watching. Stay subscribed for more upcoming content. And of course, until next time, may the Force be with you.